Welcome to A Dose of Feel Good. I'm your host, Whitney Bischoff, and today we are talking about if you are still figuring it out, small dose, slow bloom. You can see full show notes at doseofeelgood.my.canva.site. Now let's dive into today's episode. Welcome back to Dose of Feel Good. We are at episode 46, so thank you for joining me again this week. And our topic this week is if you are still figuring it out, small dose, slow bloom. And we are officially in spring. The flowers are getting ready to bloom. I don't know about y'all. We had a big blizzard last week. And now all of a sudden our yard is turning green and it feels a little early for that. And then I remind myself we are deep into March. So it is about time that the trees are going to start sprouting their leaves. And I am so excited. So I feel like our title really fits with the season that we're in. Really, we're going to be talking a lot about identity and I don't know about y'all, but the term midlife crisis, whether you're midlife or not, sometimes just like that identity crisis that sometimes we feel like we're in, we feel like we have to have it all figured out. And that's what we're going to be talking a lot about this week. I feel like oftentimes post-high school or while you're in high school or even as young people, oftentimes we get the question over and over, what do you want to be when you grow up? What do you want to be when you grow up? And that changes a lot throughout being when you're little. I know, at least for me, at one point, I really wanted to be a police officer. I think back to that now. I would not be a good police officer. That would not be something I'd be good at. But I really thought that's what I wanted to be. I also wanted to be a math teacher, and I talk about this with the engineering students that I work with. I do not have the brain to be a math teacher. That's not how my brain works. It's also not really my personality at all. And we expect young people, high school students, to have their life all planned out, to go straight into college and know what their life is supposed to look like, to pick a major and feel like, oh, I am set into that path. And oftentimes students change their major or, shift what that looks like as they really start to discover what their identity looks like, or really when they start to have different experiences, start to really feel like, oh, this is what aligns with who I want to be. But we can't expect young people to have all of those experiences to know what you want to do with your life for the rest of your life. And so I think we often get put into this place of needing to know what we want to do, or sometimes getting pigeonholed into what we're doing for the rest of our life because of making that decision as a 16, 17, 18-year-old person. And our brains are not fully developed at that point. And so we get to this point sometimes in our 30s, 40s, 50s, depends, as we start reflecting of, is this really what I want to do? And so it feels like we're still figuring it out of who am I? And we haven't really even given ourselves the opportunity to have these life experiences to show us what we truly enjoy. And I think we just have really created this culture in this society that we're supposed to have it all figured out, and we're supposed to have it all figured out early, and that's just not the reality. So we get into this conflict between, honestly, where we've dedicated so much time and energy and honestly financial resources. If you think of, going to college, or even the people who have gone to med school, law school, and all of a sudden they're like, I hate this. I hate what I am doing every single day, right? Putting all of our energy into, because we spend so much time in our work lives that we have this conflict between that piece, right? And where we truly feel our passion and identity aligns. And if we've really done the hard work of discovering, what lights us up inside, there might be this conflict between where we are having to spend so much time and energy just to survive in our day jobs, if you will, but then also where we feel like our passion really is. And I do genuinely believe that there are the lucky people where those two pieces align, but that isn't everyone. And I think it takes people, and this is really difficult, even if we make that decision to choose to be brave and pivot our entire lives to what does light us up inside, it doesn't come together right away. It doesn't just work out because we're like, ooh, I'm going to be brave. I'm going to follow my passions. And whether that's, being an entrepreneur for whatever that is, app development, writing a book, starting a podcast, hey, it doesn't just come together overnight. And so that can be really hard when, you've maybe left something that was secure and you've followed something that does light you up inside, and it doesn't just work out right away. It takes work, energy, connections with the right people, and a little bit of luck, and it doesn't just happen overnight. And so often we might give up on that thing as we're trying to align these two pieces of like, ooh, I've really figured out this is what lights me up inside. I'm brave enough to pursue that, and it's not working out. And that can then pull us kind of back in of like, maybe this isn't what I'm meant to do. And so we're often struggling with these pieces that conflict over and over of trying to be secure enough to go after what lights us up inside, but then also figuring out what is even that thing. And again, that doesn't even include the whole midlife crisis piece of everything outside of identity and knowing what it is of who we are and who we want to be and what we want our legacy to look like, and all of those pieces, which could be a whole different episode of I've hit my midlife crisis early but questioning like, am I really living a legacy? Because we don't live forever. Anyways, so I think as we're talking about how do we address this almost identity crisis, and I think for me, it really comes down to finding daily doses of meaning in everyday life. So I think of this as making one person feel that their life matters every single day. And we can do that even if we're in our day jobs that take so much energy that it can be just one conversation with one person in that space, but it can also be in the things that we're pursuing, that we're really passionate about, and knowing that if I can make even one person's day better, then that's a win. And I talk to people about that all the time, that we have these big goals, these big things that we're trying to figure out. But if we just break it down into really like the daily dose of meaning for one person, let's count that as a win. Like, those things do add up over time. And I think that's how we really start to mend this and put this together of what does this then look like long term, and struggling with identity and identity development and things like that. And I think this can be shown in a variety of ways. So for me, I am like the textbook case here. So when I went to college, I wanted to major in psychology. I knew I did not want to be a counselor. They never tell you what are all the things that you can do with a psychology degree. I really felt pressured to, you have to be a counselor. You need to go get your master's in counseling. Even upon graduation, when I was looking for jobs, almost all of them were, you have to have a master's in counseling. And eventually I became an advisor for the behavioral sciences, so students going through that. And I found out very quickly, again, through life experiences, which you don't know what you don't know, that human services is the field to go. They don't always require you to have a master's, but you do very similar work. And you're not necessarily pigeonholed into, being a licensed counselor. But I didn't know that at the time. And so that's really what led me into higher education, of helping people understand what are all of the opportunities out there so that they can choose, like, what are those things that really light you up inside. And for me, like, in the back of my mind, I always wanted to do suicide prevention, but not through a counseling lens. I wanted it to really look like the everyday things that really do make a difference. So I always said, like, I was doing that without people even knowing I was doing that, because I do think when people know what their purpose and meaning is, that can be really, really powerful. And as I kind of pivoted or found my calling, if you will, in higher education, I really had this in the back of my mind that I just wanted to impact people and change their life trajectory. That so many people, they go into higher ed because they want to improve their own lives, or sometimes even their family lives, and they've oftentimes never felt like they could actually do it. And as staff members, like, we had the opportunity to empower students to know that they can actually do it. And I think that was where that identity piece started to come together for me. And I think once I started to understand that it wasn't about the job, it was about impacting people, I have always felt like there was more people to impact. And that's where I honestly am at a little bit of an identity piece right now, because I do feel like I'm in a space where this podcast or the opportunity to speak with more people, like, there's more people out there that are in my immediate network or sphere in small town South Dakota. And I want that opportunity, right? So it's that consistency or that play of, like, I know I'm impacting people in the space of my day job, but there's so much more I want to do, and I'm genuinely passionate about wanting to do that. So kind of, how do those two pieces come together? And I saw this quote that said something along the lines of, you'll never know the impact that you will have if, or how many people wanted to say something to you, whether that's a compliment, approach you, XYZ. And so they were saying, like, say what you feel, because that could make the difference for somebody. And I took away from that, like, have the audacity to do it, right? To do that, because 9 times out of 10, it's going to be a powerful moment for somebody, rather than facing that regret of, oh, I wish I would have said something. And I think we hear that a lot, but I kind of had this aha moment that, like, we will never really know how many people wanted to approach us or wanted to say something or wanted to tell us the impact that we've had on their lives. And I think that's really, really cool. I think when we're talking about identity and the impact that we can have, I really have started to think of this in a few different ways. So first, I think what's really powerful and what has really helped in my healing journey is to not put all of your eggs in one basket. And what I mean by that is, if you are really passionate about what you do in your day job, make sure that you have something that you're really passionate outside of your day job. Because, like I said, working in higher education, I knew in the back of my head, all I wanted to do was impact people and help them see what they can do, especially in moments where they've never been told that. And I put everything into my work in higher ed. And when that went away, I really, really struggled. And I had a mentor tell me, make sure that you have something that refills your joy, or where you can do that is outside of this job. And I think that's really where this podcast comes in. I do a lot where I just want to talk with strangers. I give compliments a lot. I just went to Mayo Clinic and I talked to literally every single person almost that I was walking by or sitting next to. But I think that's where, like, you have the opportunity to impact more people than maybe even if you really, really love your job. Don't put all of your eggs in that one basket, because it can go away and that can be really, really detrimental to your mental health. And so knowing that your identity is made of layers, and we have to balance those layers, that we can't just all put it in one area. And I'm not sure that at the end of the day, we're ever going to have it all figured out of who we are, who we want to be, because at the end of the day, even if we reach that place of, oh, I have it all figured out, we're going to move into bigger and better things. That's who we are as humans. We want growth to happen. But I do think that when we're talking about small dose and knowing that bloom does happen, we have to be reminded that bloom, even in the earth, it happens in seasons, right? There are times where it's not happening, and then spring comes around and everything blooms and it's beautiful. And we also know that there are some seasons of life that have better harvest than others. Shout out to South Dakota, where there's lots of things that are being harvested. But we know that it's the same in seasons of life, that there's going to be opportunities where we have these big blooming moments where everything just comes together and we move forward in that direction. And there's going to be other moments where we feel like it's supposed to be blooming and it just doesn't. And so we have to pivot and allow for opportunities to bloom in other areas of life. And so that's where we really have to have that balance of, I always say, our day jobs, right? And then also like what refills you and what is that identity piece outside of the day job where we pull and push so much energy into. We have to have that balance outside of that space as well. So the big pieces, and I'm going to reiterate this a couple times, is take that chance on you. So if you're really like, what is that piece? Oh, I'm really stuck in this space. Take that chance. Like if you feel like you're at that opportunity to take that leap of faith, I encourage you to be brave and do that. I also think give yourself grace if this is the season where the blooming isn't happening. That's okay. There might be another opportunity or another season. There will be where you are going to bloom in that space. And that reminder to, if you're thinking of opportunities where you should be connecting with folks, to either tell them, I want to connect with you. I want to give you this compliment. I want you to know that I'm glad you exist in that space. Say and do what you feel is right in that moment and don't question it. Just kind of go after that and do it in kind of those bite-sized pieces. That daily dose of meaning can be really powerful. So our call to action, a couple of pieces. We're going to keep it short and sweet. Make sure to take a look. We do have a toolkit out on our social media where you can be reminded of these pieces of how do I actually put this into practice. First, I want you to identify where you put most of your time and energy. Like I said, I think a lot of us put it in our day jobs just because we have to, 40 hours of our week. That's where it is, sometimes 40 plus. And so identify where are you putting most of that time and energy. And then the second piece that's kind of the flip side of that is like, what lights your soul on fire? What are you really passionate about? Those might be aligned, they might not, but being able to identify those two pieces. And then the third piece is where this all comes together. What are ways to balance those two identities so they can feed into each other? Are there opportunities where you can align, these are the things that light my soul on fire, and can I weave that into where I spend the most time and energy? And that's where I really started to, at least for me, understand that like, I just want to impact people. And the more I can do that as part of my day job, then I'm fulfilled in that space, right? But I also don't want the only place that I'm impacting people as my day job. I need to have that part of my everyday life outside of there as well. So that's where we're talking about balance. First, identifying both of those spaces, and then how do I bring that passion and light and energy into both spaces. And then the last piece, I want to provide you or provide yourself with that self proclamation to the universe that you're going to take those chances on yourself. You're going to give yourself grace, and you're going to say and do what you feel to give yourself that daily dose of meaning and knowing the power of those moments. So with that, we did go a little over today. So thanks for bearing with me. If you need the reminder to give yourself that grace, or knowing that, blooming comes in seasons, so we do have a sticker for reminder out on our Etsy shop. So take a peek at that and get yourself one. Otherwise, we will have another episode of our sticker series out next week. And take care of yourselves. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you are feeling ready to conquer the week and let your impact ripple out to the world around you. Let's connect on Instagram and Threads at Dose of Feel Good Podcast.
If you're loving the podcast, I'd love it if you'd hit that subscribe button and leave a review. Until next time, share your own dose of feel good and never underestimate the power of positivity.